Feel free to, but we'll get cracking if that's all right. So without further ado, Tristan Baker, Head of Performance, and Alex Vokes, who's a brilliant local runner who we've been working with for a while, are going to speak on strength and conditioning. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dan. We're going to come and have a seat. We're going to make this quite informal.
Hello?
In fact, let's swap because my slides are this side. So yeah, thanks everyone for coming down. It's great to see so many people down here this evening. As I say, we're going to keep this quite informal, and I'm not going to spend too much time talking initially. I'm just going to hand over to Alex, who, as Dan says, is a fantastic athlete, and he's been working and training with us for the last good 4 or 5 years at least, I'd say. He's got a really great story. He is a real proponent for a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about, not just my presentation, but also a lot of the other areas that we're talking about as well. So I'm going to hand over to Alex, and then I'm going to come back in towards the end of our time just to kind of go over some of the theoretical stuff that he might chat about as well. So, Alex.
Hello. Yeah, thank you very much for having me. There's a very nice introduction, but it's important you know that I have not always been a good runner. Like, when I first started running, initially, it's important you know this, that in 2008, I drove a car from London to Mongolia as in my gap year. This is what I did. As soon as I got home from that's another story for another day, but as soon as I got home from that, I decided, what sort of challenges do people do next? And the answer there is running marathons. So within a 5-minute decision, I'd signed up to the New York Marathon. It was very easy to get into races back then, so you could just go on the website and sign up. And then, so the first run I ever did outside of cross country was training for the New York Marathon, where I managed to run 2 kilometers. That was it, right? And I realized that it was quite hard to do. So with that, all I did back then in 2009 was just try and keep running further every week. That's all I ever did. And eventually got to the start line of that race, and all I wanted to do was not walk one step. I had no idea what time I'd be able to do or anything like that. I was using a stopwatch I'm sure lots of people here have done this, where you didn't have a GPS watch, you just had a stopwatch and tried to work out how far you'd gone. So I got to the New York Marathon start line, and the first time I ever met another runner was at the expo for New York. That's the first time I'd ever met anyone else who did running. And then suddenly I'm there. There's like 50,000 people doing that race. When I got there, it was like all these runners were at this place, and it was the first time I'd ever seen another runner, and people had Boston Marathon jackets on, and that was curious to me at that point. And from there, we'll get on to another story. But so at New York, I managed to finish that race 4 hours, 9 minutes and 20 seconds. The day after that, I was in my hotel and I signed up for the Copenhagen Marathon in May, Berlin Marathon in September, and the Athens Classic Marathon in November from that year, and thought, I don't even know why I made those decisions, but just kept pushing myself to find something else. With that, this is the first year of running, so I did a 4:09 in New York, 3:45 in Copenhagen, 3:34 in Berlin, and then 4 hours 30 in Athens, because it was very hot and hard. And since then, I didn't run again until 2018. So
that's around the time you came in here? I'm trying to remember.
So this is the one marathon I did before I came here. Right. So that was my origin story of running, just making it up. In 2018, I had a goal of running the Dublin Marathon just faster than I did the Berlin Marathon at 3:34, because I'd stayed active in this time, cycling a lot and doing stuff, but I'd fallen out of running. And I did a better training plan there, but still didn't know any runners really, and did a 3:16 in Dublin. And then since then, lots of people got into running at COVID, and I started to run a lot more during COVID, and that's when I started to get a bit quicker and a bit open up doors to being able to possibly run in Boston. So,
which was a massive sort of box to tick.
Yeah, like when I was in New York, when you first see these people with the jacket on for Boston, you know it's something that's really good for an amateur runner to be able to try and qualify for, and particularly where I started from a 4 hour, 9 minute marathon runner to having to run under 3 hours. That would have been ludicrous to me, but I knew that I'd try my best to be able to do it.
Nice. Yeah, and that's kind of a culmination of a lot of things, isn't it? So if we come back to your first entry point to Go Perform, as I say, a few years ago now, probably quite similar to a lot of runners who've not done much strength training at the time. You came in with a bit of an injury, if I'm right in saying.
Yes, so like in COVID, I got a lot better at running, but that meant my running volume went up a lot in terms of my capabilities got a lot higher. But with that, I kept breaking down and having half a good block, so it'd be a 12-week block for a training for something. I'd get through 6 weeks of it feeling unbelievable and then break down and nurse my way to a start line. So for the race that really got me to turn up at Go Perform was the London Marathon in, my wife Lucy's here, who used to work at Guide Dogs charity, and they had someone pull out of the London Marathon from the charity places. This would have been maybe 2 weeks before, 2 months before COVID. Or, I don't know, did anyone doing the London Marathon around that time? The first one that was cancelled at COVID.
5 years ago now.
Yeah, well, with that, I picked up a place 2 weeks before it, just before it was cancelled, and then kept trying to train for that. So then I was basically training for the London Marathon for about 5 years to be able to complete it. The one that did go ahead, the first one that went ahead, I was injured going into, but I was running really nicely, and then again breaking down. And that's the day that I came into Go Perform, because I'd been bouncing around physiotherapies, going into these physiotherapies, telling them what I did, and they just tell me that I ran too much. This is something. I'd go to the next physio, they'd say, well, you've got to stop running so much. It's like, I paid £50 for this, and this is all they're telling me. And then suddenly, I found Go Perform's website, and I was like, why haven't I found this before? This is something. And I came in and spoke to Dan, was the first person I talked to here. I came in here where I'd been running up and down this road at home where it's got a cambered edge, and I've got ITB syndrome by just running up and down the same road like this. And I came in and I basically couldn't straighten my leg because every time whatever tendon it was clicked over something, it made me scream with pain. And I came in and said this to Dan, and he was like, oh, well, you need to get stronger, rather than telling me, stop doing that. And I immediately knew I was in the right place here. So, and also with that, I know, everyone knows that you should be doing some kind of strength training as part of running, but no one ever has time to do it or anything like that. So I was convinced that I could run under 3 hours at the marathon, but it needed for me to change something about my running to be able to do so.
Yeah, fantastic. And a little bit of what I'm going to talk about is kind of the philosophy that we have when it comes to strength training here at Go Perform. And I won't put pressure on Alex to describe exactly what that is, but I'll allow him to explain his experiences having gone through many cycles of many races, marathons, as well as ultras through the building. And what did that end up culminating with in the last year or two? Well,
when I started strength training 4 days a week because I found something, I enjoyed it. But what that did for me was that I could start coping with higher volume of running and reduce my risk of injury completely. So we started to get through blocks, and the first time I can't remember exactly the year, it would have been London that went, I'll tell you what, there was one
post-COVID.
Yeah, the first one that went post-COVID, that was in October.
2021, I believe.
I did that, but you'll remember this, that I did that with an injury, and I ran through the race and then couldn't walk for 6 months. Not 6 months.
Came in using golf clubs as crutches.
Yes.
For anyone who's interested.
Because I can't stop myself, with this guy. But then, that was in October, but then the next one went in April of that, the next year. I don't know what year it was, somewhere. And that's the one where everything went right, and I ran 2:58.35 and qualified for Boston for the first time, which was just an unbelievable thing for me to be able to do, coming from a 4:09 marathon runner to get under 2:58 with nothing I got a lot better running, but I've done one of my marathons was 4 hours, 30 minutes, and I got down to 2:58, which is, everyone's running story is individual to their own, capabilities and stuff, but my one, I feel like I've come quite a long way with that. So when I did that, that was all down to having a same block that I've had so many times, but without breaking down on the way to get into the start line, and that came with a lot of strength training.
Yeah, perfect. That's a great segue, I guess, in terms of what I'm about to talk about. But yeah, thanks, Alex, for sharing that. And if anyone's got any questions later on for Alex and his story, he goes, I know that it's an awful lot deeper than we've got time for tonight. There's been ups and downs. It's not been a completely straight line from that 4-hour 30 marathon to 2:58. We've had to battle training load, ultramarathon injuries and loading complications and things like that along the way as well. So yeah, it's been some journey and it's kind of still progressing really nicely, isn't it? So yeah, I'm gonna have a quick chat to you all just around our philosophy and strength training when it comes to running, and running of any distance, I should reiterate as well. So Alex runs, I think a marathon is kind of a 100-meter sprint for yourself, isn't it? You're kind of that and up to ultras. But if you're a track athlete, 5K and below, up to marathon and ultra, then I think there's something here relevant to yourself as well. Alex, do you mind just, I'm not sure if the guys on the other side can see, just grab a seat there, because I might get your opinion on a couple of these things. So, strength training for the running athletes. So something to make a point straight off the bat. The strength training is absolutely not bodybuilding. So there is a very big difference. These guys have trained in a very specific way for a very long time to end up looking as such. Alex has already mentioned he strength trains here 4 times a week. And
this is the real reason you got me to come in, isn't it?
Yes. No, we're not trying to sell something different, but this is really just an illustration, an exaggeration to make a point, really. So I think a lot of people often start their strength training journey in here and they think, I don't want to get too heavy, I don't want to get too bulky, too much muscle mass. These guys, as much as they're trying, they're not coming at under 3 hours in a marathon, I would suggest. So that's just something to get out of the way initially. So why would we bother with strength training? Well, Alice has kind of touched on a lot of these things already, but ground reaction forces can be up to 2 to 4 times your body weight, depending on the speed that you're running, and depending on also how you contact the ground. And that occurs within anywhere between 0.16 and 0.3 seconds. So it's an awful lot of force going through your leg, your foot, ankle, knee, all the way up through your body in a very short space of time. So the faster you run, that creates but also necessitates faster ground reaction forces and shorter ground contact time. So as you become a better runner, as you get faster, these two, the relationship between these two only increases. So shorter ground contact times and much larger forces going through the body. So strength training basically helps you cope with those forces. So the central nervous system, or strength training improves, the central nervous system's ability to recruit muscles at the right time and in the right way. So it's not firing muscles that should be relaxed halfway through the running stride, for example. It also improves your ability to express and tolerate force. So as hopefully you can all imagine, if you can lift a heavier weight, then you can tolerate a heavier force going through your body. Inter and intramuscular coordination and synchronization, all quite complicated or long words, but fairly simplistic. Effectively, it comes back to this initial point where it's switching some muscles off as they need to be quietened down, and it's firing some muscles when they need to be fired. And you'll notice, or you'll see runners, or maybe noticing yourself as you've gone through your running journey, your technique will improve, and that comes down to how your central nervous system fires your muscles at the right time, creating that intermuscular coordination. Reduced energy cost at sub-maximal intensities as well, so it makes you much more economical, and there's a lot of research showing that you can run at a much lower percentage of your VO2 max at lower intensities. It has no effect or no negative effect on VO2 max, and it also improves your injury risk as well, which I'll touch on now. So, some common injuries, these are kind of the top 5 injuries, and I'm sure, by show of hands, does anyone see anything up there that they recognise in themselves? Yeah, a couple. So, medial tibial stress syndrome, which is a fancy name for shin splints. Achilles tendinopathy, plantar fasciitis, that's on the sole of your foot. patella tendinopathy, iliotibial band syndrome, which I think Alex mentioned earlier on. So strength training can improve your bone mineral density as well, which is something I didn't mention on the other slide. That's effectively the robustness of your skeleton, how dense and how strong your skeleton is, as well as the capacity of your soft tissue, so your connective tissue, your tendons that attach your muscles to your bones. And that's where a lot of these injuries come in. So a lot of these are tendons. So Achilles tendinopathy, patella tendinopathy, that connective tissue can often get wear and tear and is protected by strength training, or can be made more robust by strength training. Okay, so this presentation is a little bit longer than we've got time for tonight, but just a very brief overview in terms of how we classify these exercises. What a lot of people think is, I need to improve my running, so I'm going to go right to the top of the tree and I'm going to run as fast as I can. I'm going to work on improving my technique. I'm going to get down the track, etc., etc. So as I've mentioned before, trying to run faster means that you will experience higher forces on your body. So you need to work on your strength and control, how well you can tolerate that. What underpins how strong you are able to the strength levels you're able to achieve is how well you move. So your movement competency as well as your soft tissue capacity. So I'll go through some very simple exercises, which I think are going to pop up here. So this is your movement competency, effectively your ability to move and express force through the full range of movement. So by show of hands, can anybody in the room squat hips below knees like the gentleman in this picture here? One or two people, yeah, fantastic. It's not a trick question. Some people can, some people can't. Effectively moving well through that full range of movement. If you're a sprinter, or if you are doing a sprint session, your knee will get quite close to, if not slightly above your hip as you go through that movement. So being able to perform that under a controlled situation with your own body weight is a really good starting point before you move further up that pyramid that I had on the previous slide. Lots of other ones that we kind of build into people's programs just to help them develop their movement competency and their capacity. And often our philosophy is to start people at this point. So we're not going to suddenly load somebody up with lots of weight and get them to perform high force and high volume movements. We'll make sure they move well before we progress them on. I'm going to skip through the next few slides, just because they just show examples of these exercises, and I'm just conscious of time. So if we move down to, bear with me, this slide here. So just something else to bring to people's attention. So strength development, so training for endurance is not, strength endurance is not the goal. So often you may have heard this term, strength endurance, in terms of how many repetitions can you achieve. But if you're running the 1500 meters, let's say you've got a 1 meter stride length, that might be 1500 steps, but you're not going to perform 1500 reps in the gym. It just doesn't work quite like that. So we need to improve our maximal strength and our force expression. So again, how well we can express and tolerate force. And just an example here, if we've got runner A versus runner B, runner A has a body mass of 70 kilos and has a maximum squat. Now the squat I'm using as an example, it's not the be all and end all exercise, but they have a maximum squat, so the maximum force that they can tolerate and express is 70 kilos. Runner B, their identical twin, is 70 kilos as well, and they have a maximum squat of 140 kilos. So each stride costs runner B 50% less energy in this very simple example. Effectively, runner B, the identical twin of runner A, is twice as strong, can squat 140 kilos compared to runner A's 70 kilos. So they're able to express twice as much force in that movement. Therefore, if they're both running at the same running speed, it's much more energy efficient, much more easy for runner B to run. I'm going to skip through some of these as well. What we're going to look at is how it all ties into a program. And I think this is something worth mentioning as well. So I appreciate that the writing on here isn't enormous, but all the physical attributes that go into your strength training, so not just exercises like the squat, the lunge, pushes and pulls, things like that, also plyometric exercises, which we haven't had time to touch on today, but are really important for running and you might have come across as well. They can all be trained side by side at any time of the year. So at any time during your training phase, training cycle, but depending on how close you are to race day, you will emphasize different parts of that. So you're not going to be lifting heavy, making your muscles really tired the week prior to a marathon. You might be feeling a little more bouncy doing your pogos and your plyometric exercises and things like that in the weeks running up to the marathon to go alongside your taper. So we turn the volume up on some things that are more important when you've got time and space and energy to develop your strength, and we turn that down as we get closer to race day, and we turn the volume up on things that are going to make you feel nice and fast and light and bouncy. Okay, so there's a few things in the research here, and I'm happy to go through these. These are just references really based on some of the stuff that we've talked about today. But what's more important is how you can fit it in. So Alex has mentioned he trains 4 times a week. That's kind of the high end when it comes to balancing marathon training, especially endurance events, because obviously you have to do that running as well. You have to spend a lot of time out on the road. So it should supplement your training as a point of emphasis. 2 to 3 strength sessions per week is ample. And if you can separate these sessions by 24 hours, that's always a good idea. And I always say to people, keep your hard days hard and your easy days easy. So if you've got a high intensity interval session, that might be when you do your strength training or your harder strength sessions as well. Just so that you're not burning the candle at both ends throughout the week, which is kind of this point here. And as I said, just to reiterate, it really should supplement. It shouldn't become the be-all and end-all. It should make you feel energized for your running. It should make you feel like you really want to go and take on the world once you've finished your session, and that you can run to your fullest ability and not be heavy-legged and slow. That's the aim at the end of the day. So a little bit of a whistle-stop tour through there. I hope you got a lot out of Alex's journey, and as I say, he's around as well if anyone's got any questions for him as we go through. I'm going to hand over, I think, to Heidi next. Perfect. Thanks very much for listening, guys. I think we're going to do a quick transition over to Heidi and then a short break, all right? Thank you very much.